Welcome to the Haven Collective. I'm JR, and this is the Beacon Bit. This week we're reflecting on 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. So I started this board game endeavor recently where I'm hosting game nights around Dallas, and in order to get all of the games and all of my signs and all that stuff, I've invested in a couple of big canvas bags. And the bags looked kind of plain, they look kind of boring, and you can't really put stickers on them because they're canvas. So I decided I would start attaching some of the patches I had and then, getting some more weird, fun patches. But I first tried to iron them on. So some of the patches come with iron-on backs. Others, there's this patch glue that you can do an iron-on, which was pretty tough with a canvas bag anyway, because I was trying to turn it inside out and get it on the ironing board. And the first attempt was a disaster. There was glue all over the bag, and the patches weren't really staying on anyway. They were kind of becoming unstuck. So I realized I was going to have to bite the proverbial bullet and learn how to sew. Now, I made a pair of American flag boxers in 7th grade home economics class. So I, in theory, at one time knew how to use a sewing machine, but I figured a sewing machine would give me the same kind of problems with the canvas patches that an iron would. And so I thought I could probably, because these patches are all pretty small, I could probably just hand sew them. And again, I knew the basic mechanics, right? You thread a needle, you stick it through over a bunch of times, and eventually you have a patch. And obviously it's a little harder than that, but I've sewn a bunch of patches on at this point, and I'm starting to get, we won't say good, we'll maybe say competent. I only stab myself 3 times a day at this point. I have managed to get most of the patches on with what I've been told is some pretty proficient stitching. So I'm starting to feel pretty good about myself. But it did cause me to start reflecting about how professionalized our culture is. I mean, I think there was a day when pretty much everyone knew how to sew, men and women. And that's because if you got a hole in your clothes or something like that, you just needed to be able to fix it yourself. And maybe I'm the weirdo who's the one guy who just never really picked up sewing or doesn't practice it very much, but I feel like that's one of those things that fewer and fewer people in our culture really invest the time in learning how to do. And again, not any laurels for myself. I only learned to do it so I could get these patches to stay on these canvas bags, but I probably could have found a professional seamstress or seamster to sew these on and paid them for it, because that's the kind of culture that we live in now. Nearly everything has become professionalized, and we can find someone that we can pay to do almost anything. And of course, that sort of professionalizing mentality has worked its way into the church over the decades. I think a lot of us, when we think about church, think of church as a professionalized institution where we pay a small subset of people that we call pastors or ministers or something like that to do the work of the church, and then everyone else is a consumer, where everyone else is the people who pay for the services that the professionals provide. But church was never designed to be that. Church from the beginning has been designed to be a collective, a place that is a product of everyone's collective endeavors, collective efforts together. This is not the first time that the attitude of the larger culture has infected the church. This is actually what's happening in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, where Paul is talking about spiritual gifts. This idea that various divine spirits could give worshipers gifts was not foreign to the Corinthians. Corinth was a major Greek city, and it actually wasn't very far from Delphi, which is where one of the most famous oracles lived. You've probably heard of the Oracle of Delphi. The oracle was literally a person who would be overcome by a spirit, and usually it was because they were in some kind of drug-induced ecstasy, and they would begin uttering prophecies. But it was understood that this oracle had a special gift from the gods, that when they entered into this state, it was something that was otherworldly, it was supernatural, it was divine. And so the Corinthians had imported this understanding of how the spirit world worked and how God's distributed gifts into the church. And Paul had taught them that, hey, when you gather together as a church, the Spirit gives you all these different gifts so that you can worship together. And they had started ranking the gifts. They had started saying, well, some gifts are better than other gifts. Some gifts make some people more important than others. And they had been using them, again, to reinforce the kinds of hierarchies that you found in Corinthian culture. And so in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul is having to say, no. The Spirit does not give us gifts to elevate us above each other or to single some people out as more valuable or more godly or more special. The Spirit gives us gifts so that we can serve each other. We actually get gifts that other people need, and then they have gifts that we need. It is a programmed dependence. We are, by virtue of being part of the church, we are forced to rely on each other for the full breadth of God's grace. I think that's really beautiful, and it casts a new light on professionalized church. When we outsource the entire work of the Spirit to a handful of paid professionals, that's really anti-grace, because what we're doing is denying what the Spirit has given to everyone else in the congregation. And when we create church systems that are run by and rely on just a few paid professionals or a few key volunteers, we're missing what the Spirit has given to everyone else. So last week at the live kickoff, we talked about how important it was going to be over this next month for us to consider what each and every person contributes to Haven. And this is another big reminder that this isn't just talk for us. When you don't share with the rest of the congregation the unique gifts that God has given you for your church family, you're causing the rest of us to miss out. In the same way that if I don't share the unique gifts God has given me, you're missing out. And I'm actually harming you by choosing not to share. I don't want any of us to feel guilt or shame about that, because again, I think we all come from a world where we expect the few to do the work, and that's why they get paid, right? That's the professionalized kind of culture we're in. And it's the same kind of rotten influence that the Corinthians had when they expected things to work the way they worked down the road in Delphi. And what we have to do is reject all of that and say, no, what it means to be a church is to be something radically different from the world around us, to be a place that rejects the professionalism that we see infect so much else and insists that we all matter. I'm so excited to continue this conversation with you. I'm so excited to hear you as you discover what God has gifted you with and how God has gifted you to be a part of Haven. I look forward to continuing these conversations in our Beacon this coming Sunday. Until then, grace and peace be with you.